the invisible hand and said, okay, we're going to use the market system to decide how global warming is going to be resolved by letting people trade permits to pollute. And it's just absolutely, it's just beyond comprehension how outrageously insane and unscientific it is, because obviously the destabilization is a technical problem. You find technical solutions and you resolve the source of the solution. So the answer to your question is actually extremely simple. You simply find the problem and solve it. But when you have a monetary system, you have to go through all these loops and weird backwards things, and you have to deal with the establishments of certain corporations that don't want to, say, hinder their production, like the oil industry, that probably has a big stake in the climate destabilization. You know, it's all these barriers in the financial system of the establishment and the status quo, and that's really the problem. I think if there wasn't that barrier and people thought scientifically and they said, okay, well, here's the problem, we're going to solve it, and boom, they did it, then, you know, that question wouldn't even need to be asked, you know? If there's no resolution, then you work as hard as you can to figure out the resolution. And once you have the resolution, you simply apply it. Why would the species not apply something that would help itself? You know? Only psychotic barriers and the monetary establishment status quo that limit people, block them off, will allow for such a thing. And that's the paradigm we live in now.
So I think that's correct. I think that all societies in the world today are established. We don't want established societies. We want emergent societies that are always growing and changing. If you design a laptop computer and say that's it, that's the final frontier, you don't know what you're talking about, because they will change. They get smaller, faster, lighter, cheaper in time. Nothing can be frozen. People say, I'm a utopianist. I believe in utopia. I don't. The cities I design will be a straitjacket for the kids of the future. They'll design their own cities. But if you make a statue of me and put it in the city, you hold people back, because things move on, they change. And when you have heroes, watch out. Whenever you have heroes, they're trying to control you to admire people. I'm no better, no worse than anyone else. I've made a lot of stupid things and moves in my life. I've made poor decisions, but it's the poor decisions that help me. For example, I don't look at myself as good or bad. I look at myself in the same way I looked at the Frenchman that made little wings and jumped off the Eiffel Tower, and he died. And his brother-in-law wrote, make wings larger next time. There's no other way to know. That's why I say nobody ever does anything wrong. You have to think about that. They don't know how big to make wings to build flying machines. So they make them too small, they jump off the top of a barn and break their legs. Guy said, what a stupid thing he did, after you learn how big wings have to be. Don't you see? Nobody makes a mistake. They use the best tools they have. When the volcano rumbles, the witch doctor says you gotta make a sacrifice. Throw your brother-in-law into the volcano. If that doesn't work, you've got your sister-in-law. But never the witch doctor or the king. Think about it.
My name is Timothy. I'm just wondering how you convince a sane person to manage
You'll come to him after
this
him,
kind
probably.
of thing. Like, what's the hierarchy of managing cities and governments? And I mean, it seems like you would have to like replace people.
Interdisciplinary teams is the word, where you have a group of teams that overlap substantially. They have specialization, naturally, because the human mind can only be capable of so much. But mainly, they're interacting with a database of information. It's a technical process. So rather than decision-making happening from any particular human being, even a scientist, scientists in effect don't make decisions. They constantly reach and arrive at the decisions. That's all. Scientists is engaged in a process, not a decision-making thing. It's learning and then finding that solution and finding the next best solution as new input comes in. So these interdisciplinary teams, essentially you'd have an agricultural team for your city system. We'll bring it down to a city level. Then you have your industrial manufacturing team, and they oversee the processes that exist in their particular area. And of course they interrelate, because everything is synergistic related in this type of environment. You have to engage production, to engage processes for agricultural mechanisms. You have to engage resources, to engage what you would apply towards the approach to grow the food. You know what I mean? Everything is interconnected, in other words. There's no way you can get around that. In fact, that was one of the great things I first learned from you, in that I sort of understood it, but you, like, a scientist that simply limits himself to one field arbitrarily is not a scientist, because they're disregarding everything else around them, and you can't do that. I mean, the entire legal system is completely unscientific. Throwing people in jail completely disregards everything about what might condition that individual to behave the way they did. As I said in the film, the scientific approach is absolutely absent in any type of social arena in the world today. It's only in isolated things like how to build a computer or an airplane, and even that's deficient because of the monetary system. But I'll leave it at that. I hope that answers your question. But the interdisciplinary teams, Jacque, you want to say anything about the interdisciplinary teams that will help run?
In the future, we would not turn out structural engineers or architects or mechanical or electrical engineers. We'll turn out generalists, people that know sociology, social science, the history of civilization, so no one can use them to make weapons of war. I want to hear the other side of the story. In other words, even if somebody would have criticized another country, we would invite the prime minister of that country on the air to give the public their view. Do you understand? A democracy is where you have all points of view on the air. And as long as you don't have that, you're not going to have a true democracy.
With reflect to the interdisciplinary teams, though, for a resource-based economy.
Yes, well, that's different.
Yeah, that's what we were asking about. If you could comment on that.
If you think about it, when scientists were asked to turn out an atom bomb, they did. When you said, can you put a man on the moon? They did. We never asked scientists how we design a transportation system that's safe. We never asked them that. How we design a civilization that wouldn't go to war. We've never put those problems to them. We always put material problems for the benefit of industry. And scientists become victims of culture just like everybody else.
It's another way of dividing and conquering. They're not given the ability to critically think of anything but their specialized discipline. So they can't think outside of their field to think of a social direction, to arrive at a social direction that's sustainable for everyone. They can critically think about their own field and understand that what's wrong with it, some of them, but not very many. So we'd be very curious to see what these people in this film thought about this direction, because nobody has put it all together for a sustainable future.
If you don't understand that, consider this. If you were an Eskimo that never went any other place but lived in the north in an igloo, you say you can have anything you want. What do you want? What would you like? He never says a twin-engine Beechcraft airplane. He can't say that because it's not within the purview of his background. So people cannot think outside of their social system. If you ask a nice Jewish community to sit down with some Nazis and share their values, they can't. If you ask the black community to go to a Klan meeting and share values, they can't. Because the community of Klansmen, by the way, there were 3 million members of the Ku Klux Klan when I was a kid in America. They keep saying, give me the good old days. Well, they weren't around the good old days. And 3 million members of the Klan is a hell of a lot of dummies. You understand what I mean? So every country says we did great things, we did wonderful things. They're all full of shit, all of them. So's your society.
Yes.
And you can't have any of the things they tell you have, freedom, democracy, intellectual growth, without revising the way society operates. You can't work within the monetary system. It does not work. In other words, if I have a factory that turns out vacuum cleaners 10 times faster than you, if I share those ideas with you, I lose the competitive edge. Okay. So when you take out a patent, you're depriving everybody else of your wonderful ideas. In the future, ideas and all the resources of the earth will belong to all the people of the earth. And until that day, if you don't do that, you'll have wars, separation, territorial disputes. You must change the basis of social operation in order to have what you call peace and harmony. Absolutely. You can't have hungry nations. You can't have single nations that own most of the world's resources. That means nothing but trouble.
Thank you.
Just another question.
Yeah, I wanted to ask,
will there be an eradication of factory farmed animals?